Second day, here we go. For today, I would like to focus on two things that I've observed after watching yesterday's video. And those two things are one, my use of filler words, which I do think is quite intense. It wasn't too bad yesterday, but looking at previous examples of recordings that I've tried, I do really think that I tend to add in a lot of filler words, which isn't really any good. For today, I've actually watched several advice videos before starting this conversation. There we go. I just added one in to try and give me. Here we go, another one. Some tips on how to avoid filler words. So I'm going to be trying to apply them in this video, although I can tell that I've already used 3 filler words so far, but I'm going to try my best to avoid them basically. So if you see me speaking a little bit slowly, it's because my CPU, my brain's processing power is being used into doing what I can to avoid them. So that's one of the things that I would like to focus on. And then the other thing is the use of swearing. I did swear a few times yesterday, and I think that's not very constructive. Although I do believe that it can feel right sometimes and can even have a purpose with the audience, to really emphasize a point or something like that. Obviously, it's not any good because I do want to start a big channel and eventually get monetized. That's also something that I'm going to try and avoid today. With that being out of the way, for today's video, those are the two sort of areas that I want to work on. However, that's funny, isn't it? I'm going to talk about something just to, add in, have me talk in front of the camera for a few minutes. So today's idea that I'm going to explore is why I think that YouTube and just in general the whole video format is just at the very beginning rather than something that's already oversaturated. So listening to a lot of people in the industry and also others that want to start a YouTube channel, I very often feel that many people think that it's already an oversaturated space. If only I had started a few years ago, if only I'd gotten going 5-6 years ago, but now it's way too late. No one's ever going to watch me. My channel is never going to grow. It's just, you're too late, man. That's what I've keep hearing as an excuse by many people, and I've certainly thought the same thing. However, I do think that that's not true, because thinking about my own experiences, I've now seen over the last few years lots and lots of different new channels just pop out of thin air. Past the time that I thought was way too late. Every time this new channel popped up, and boom, it exploded out of nothing. Got lots of subscribers, got lots of views, became really big, became really popular. And I've seen that happen so many times now that I really do think that it's not the case regarding, it's not too late. It's never too late. People come and go. Things change. People want to follow different people that are more like them. So I do think that there is room for everyone. And one of the other things is that over the past few years, I've been working a lot with internet stuff. I've been publishing websites. I've been running different websites and blogs and things like that, a lot of different topics. And I'm sorry about the cat. She just really she doesn't like me talking to the camera. but I've really seen a huge transition in terms of written content to video content where it's extreme. I mean, up until a lot of the recent times, there has really been this huge thing where most of the information on the internet has been through text. That's been the main format. You go to a website, you look up something, you read whatever's on the website, and that's it. But I mean, over the last decade and even more, there is increasingly been this transition to a lot more video-based information. And obviously it's never been as big as it is now, but I do still feel that it's just the beginning, because thinking about it, I still do read a lot of text-based content, although it's a lot less than I used to. But still, if you think about the amount of information and content that's on the web today, the portion of that which is video-based, it's only a tiny bit. I mean, it's nowhere close to what it can be. So I do feel like over the next few years and indeed even decades, video is going to become even bigger. That's for sure. And I might be wrong about it, but I do feel like I'm usually oh, okay, there we go. She really did want my attention. That's fine. I really do feel like I'm usually quite early with things. I used to mine bitcoins in 2011. I've sort of been, by the way, before you start, looking me up and trying to kidnap me or something, I've lost them all or sold them all when they were worth $1 or $2. So no worries there. Anyway, with a lot of different trends and new technologies and things, I've often felt that I've been very much an early adopter in those terms. So I do think that perhaps I'm joining the video train a little bit later than I've joined a lot of other new trends, which did end up being quite big. However, I still do feel that it's quite early. In Bitcoin terms, I do feel like we're probably somewhere around the 2014 pricing, if that makes sense. I'm misremembering the dates, but basically when it hit $1,000, right? And I'm sure this is not going to make any sense unless you're familiar with the cryptocurrency space. But basically, the stage at which it got quite big, $1,000 per Bitcoin, and everyone thought like, oh, this is huge. It's way overvalued. There is no way it's going to get any bigger. It's just a bubble. The whole thing is going to collapse. And look, years later, it went to 10,000, and people were saying the same thing. It's no way this has any value. No way this is ever going to get big. And then it collapsed again. And then what do you know? Now it hit a new all-time high of, I think, it's around $60,000, which is absolutely insane. And even big companies, have started getting into the cryptocurrency space. You see this whole thing with decentralized finance, which is really taking off. Anyway, that's a little bit of an aside, but I do feel like YouTube and video content today, it's basically where sort of Bitcoin was in 2014. So it is gotten quite huge and popular. However, I'm feeling very confident about the fact that we're probably still just getting started, because if you think once again about all the sheer quantity of the content that we have online, it's only a tiny portion which is video based. And another thing that I've also think a lot about as of late is that thinking about my own media consumption, I do find that it's a lot nicer and better to actually absorb video content rather than text-based content and traditional content. And I think that's for a variety of reasons. One, it's just more digestible. You're kind of being led through the whole thing rather than having it to read it yourself. And it can be a lot more entertaining, especially if it's a well-produced video, unlike what I'm filming now, which is no editing at all, but that's on purpose. So apologies if there are too many pauses. Anyway, yes, it's really it's a lot easier to digest. It's a lot easier to absorb, and a lot more entertaining as well. And even if thinking about the percentage of video content vs text, traditional type of content that I consume, it's just really off the charts. I've probably not watched any traditional television in the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years at least. I mean, I don't even have a TV subscription anymore, and I do feel that that's the case with pretty much most people my age. And what I do, however, see my media consumption time being absorbed by on a very on an increasing basis is indeed YouTube content, and more sort of small creators that are creating their own thing. I mean, even things like Netflix, HBO, the more traditional streaming platforms, I don't watch them nearly as much as videos by just random people on the internet, right? Just like myself and others. And I wonder why that is. I do think that there is something to be said about authenticity and really having this feeling of connections and of being able to relate to the people that I'm seeing on camera. I do definitely feel that with traditional entertainment and video content, that's not often as much the case. So there is something for that, but also I think it's just the sheer variety, right? Like, you can go on YouTube and you can find anything that you want. And it's just crazy to think about, because every time I talk to my friends, and be different friends, different interests, different friend groups, I'm always blown away just by how everyone sort of finds their own little thing. Like, everyone finds the different channels and things. I mean, what I mean by that's not very clear, is that I'm blown away each time by how everyone's channels are completely different in terms of which people that they're following and whatnot. And it's just crazy, because a lot of the time, whenever I recommend a certain video to someone, or they recommend a certain creator or another video, usually we never even know of each other's creator. I'm like, oh, I can't believe that I haven't come across their work before. And they usually say the same thing. Oh, that channel, that was a really great video, thank you for sending it to me, but I can't believe I've never heard of so and so guy. And this is usually people that have millions of subscribers, right? So I think that really goes to show two things. One is just how huge and the potential is, and how many people are on YouTube. However, also how much interest there is that you can watch YouTube for hours each week without ever coming across YouTubers that all of your friends are into, or yeah. So I mean, there are a lot of things to unpack there. You could also talk about the algorithm getting you and your echo chamber and only showing you what you want. But I think that's also, you could argue that it's a bad thing, because you only see what you want to see. But at the same time, I think that it's also good in some capacity. I mean, obviously you only do get relevant content, which is good for I would say exploring what interests you. Although of course there are some issues with that as well, which you could argue. But at the same time, in terms of being a creator, I think that's a really powerful thing, because it can really help you build an audience that is very much interested in what you have to say. Like, they're really your people, right? If you do it right, of course, if you sort of niche down to a topic and you keep talking about it. So I think that has a lot of potential. Obviously, in terms of business terms, you can obviously do a lot of things with an audience that is very passionate about what you have to say and really into what your message is, but also just in terms of personal connection, right? Like, being able to connect with a lot of like-minded people that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to connect with That's something that really appeals to me. It's just like having an audience of potentially unlimited viewers which are really into what you have to say. I mean, that sounds amazing, right? So I think that's something that a lot of people find appealing. And it's crazy. I was even reading a survey just before I started watching this video about how I think it was elementary school kids in the US and the UK, how their most wished for career ambition was actually becoming a YouTube influencer, much more so than, say, becoming an astronaut or doctor or things of that nature, which I thought was quite interesting. I mean, I think it was something like, keep adding in few words, 36% of the kids that they asked in this survey, which I believe was about 3,000 people, did list YouTube as the number one thing. That was basically the top of the list. So that is obviously quite fascinating, and I think it also says something about where we're going in terms of this just being the beginning still. And I even see it across other generations. You know, if I think about my parents, they haven't really been that much on YouTube. You know, they have more so been more on the traditional side of the media, and you know, whether it be TV or text-based content. However, I'm even seeing that starting to change, and I really do think that the next big trend is going to be also older people joining the platform. I mean, that's always how it goes, right? If you think about Facebook, obviously it started out with a lot of younger people, you know, kids and teenagers and millennials and, you know, people up to their 30s and 40s and whatnot. And then as the platform matured, those people didn't really like it anymore, and then they moved somewhere else, and then, you know, older people started taking over the platform. And basically, I feel like only people over 40 use Facebook now, at least in my experience, besides Messenger, that is. But that's a good example. I mean, that's just more so something about how Facebook failed to stay relevant. What I'm saying is that I think YouTube will also start to see a lot of influx of older people as well over the coming times. I mean, I both on the creation side, but also on the viewing side. I mean, I hear my parents are even starting to use YouTube, which they haven't really ever considered before, but you know, they've downloaded the app. I've actually was seeing my mother watching some cooking recipes on YouTube recently, which I'm sure she's done before occasionally, but it's becoming a more recurrent thing. But the thing is that I see that a lot of these people, they don't really understand it quite yet. You know, they don't have even like YouTube accounts, they don't subscribe to any channels, they don't, you know, like, comment, whatever. But I do think that that's also likely going to change very soon. So that's just opens it up to an even bigger audience potentially. So I think the combination of all these factors really do say a lot about where video is headed. I think I really do feel like we're still just in the very beginning. So in that light, I don't feel too bad about starting now, although it's, you know, you could argue that 2021, the middle of it, it's very late to the game, but I don't think so. I think if I keep at it and I like it, of course, that's also a requirement, and if I'm able to get some traction, I'm gonna look back at this and in a few years and think that that wasn't too late after all. But we'll see. Only one way to find out. Cool. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about the subject. So just to evaluate today's session, I do feel like I'm slowly starting to become more comfortable talking to the camera. And actually, something else that I can also add is that it wasn't as bad as I thought. I mean, what was I afraid of, right? I held off uploading my first video for so many years now, but then I did it yesterday and it wasn't so bad. I didn't really mind it. You know, I was able to sleep just fine. I was a little bit stressed, and I've actually seen that some people have seen it as well, probably 7 or 8. So that was quite exciting as well. Thank you if you're watching this. That's fun. Anyway, I'm not sure what I was so concerned about. It wasn't really a big deal. And as for today's video, I feel like I'm slowly making progress, although it's probably still horrible to watch with all my poses and filler words, and I'm probably also not being very enthusiastic and charismatic when I talk to the camera. That's also something that I'm working on. But still, I feel like it's slowly getting better. And if I only manage to cut out additional filler words, that's probably gonna do me a lot of good and improve my presentation a lot more and camera presence. One good thing, I managed to avoid swearing words today, so I'm happy about that. But yeah, the filler words I still have to work on. Anyway, that's it for me today, and I'll be seeing you tomorrow. Thanks, bye.